Friends, have you ever been stood up for an audition? Crazy thing, but it does happen. You know, someone contacts you wanting you to come try out for their band, and they don't show up, and you're stuck waiting there for a couple hours, and then let's talk about that today. So guys, this was an interesting story. I had reconnected with an old friend of mine from many years ago. We had a few misunderstandings back in the day, and it was nice just to get together, have dinner, just chat about a few things, and be cool. It's awesome. Now, in that conversation, a couple of musicians were brought up that I completely forgot about from my local scene when I was a teenager. And it reminded me of a really funny story. A funny story, but a story I thought would be worthwhile making into a video because it might help some of you down the road. The year was 1992. Now, in 1992, there was a lot going on in music. At the time, us local musicians, we didn't know. We just went about our daily lives. Now, at the time, grunge was starting to really get popular, okay? I was a metal guy. I was really into anything that had really good technical guitar playing. But for example, the bands at the time I was really into, Testament would be a good example of that. I was into a lot of those thrash bands. Alex Skolnick was a massive influence on my playing. Old Metallica, Exodus, Megadeth. I was really into Marty Friedman with his playing. But I was also really into a band called Violence, who had a guitar player by the name of Rob Flynn at the time, who went on to form Machine Head. And they became a very popular band, great band, I'm a big fan. And at that time, I'd played, jammed and done a few little things with some friends who were my age. But I'd been playing guitar for a couple of years seriously. I had a guitar for many years, but I had a couple years where I had a good teacher and I was really making good progress on the guitar and I was doing pretty good. And I wouldn't say I was great by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought, it's time to branch out a little bit. And at that time, I grew up in the nation's capital of Canada, Ottawa. Now, Ottawa, those of you who know Ottawa, Ottawa isn't like a massive metropolis, but it's not a small city by any means. It's over 1 million people. The main music store was right downtown, and they had a billboard up where people put ads up looking for musicians or band looking for musicians or whatever. So I put an ad up saying, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I'm into these types of bands. Now again, guys, this was my first real foray into musical politics. I was such a naive person. I was in many ways for many years after that. But anyway, so I put my ad up and pretty soon I get a call. And it was from a guy who worked at a local record store. And he was, from all I knew, he was a nice guy and he was a very talented bass player. So we get talking on the phone. He says, yeah, we're putting out this demo. They were a thrash band. They're putting out this demo. We need a guy who can play some lead. I'd like you to come out and jam with us or whatever. Basically asking me to come out and audition. Cool, man. When are we going to do this? Okay, such and such a night. I don't remember the night now, but he's like, okay, we're going to meet by this fast food restaurant not too far from our jam spot. Okay, cool. So I'll be there. And what time? And I double checked with him. What time was it? And he said, okay, be there at such and such a time. Cool, no problem. So such and such a time came, and I'm waiting there, and nobody was there. And I remember saying to him, how will I know it's you guys? Well, you'll see a bunch of long-haired guys come in. Okay. Now, at that time, guys, now, to be fair, I did not have the typical rocker look. I was a bigger guy. I liked working out. I think I played football in high school. So I definitely did not have the long hair. I didn't have that typical metal rocker look that is important for some people. And, I get the whole thing now, but at the time it was a learning experience for me. So every long-haired guy that came in, I'm kind of walking up to like, hey man, are you so-and-so? And they're looking at me like, what the hell's wrong with you? I'm just here to get a Big Mac. So anyway, 2 hours go by and I'm sitting there waiting and I'm kind of a little bit nervous, but I'm also getting kind of ticked off. I'm like, this isn't cool, man. Like, you called me, taking up my time asking me to come to jam with you guys, and then you don't even have the courtesy to show up? So they rehearsed in an industrial park not too far away, and because I had a friend of a friend who jammed there, and I went there to see one of their jams one time, I had an idea of where it was. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to hop in the car and go. So I went there, and I see a guy by the front door, and I said, yeah, I'm looking for so-and-so. He said, oh yeah, they're upstairs jamming. So I walk in. The bass player is immediately apologetic because I don't think they weren't expecting me to show up. And I was nice about it. I wasn't being confrontational, but I was just kind of like, okay, well, you know, stuff happens. And they had this guy there. He was skinny. He had really nice long hair. I don't even remember what the amp was. He had a nice Charvel guitar. He was an okay guitar player. I think I would have held my own against him at the time, but it doesn't matter. The point is, they stood me up. So I'm there, and, you know, the guitar player singer, he was kind of, you know, he was asking me some courtesy questions. Oh yeah, how long have you been playing? What kind of gear do you have? It was very apparent he was just kind of going through the motions, trying to be polite. In the interim, I'd heard over the years that he wasn't a cool guy, and you know, he really had a bad habit of really saying really nasty things about people that he didn't even really know. I kind of forget how we left it. I think the bass player said he'd call me, and a week or two went by. I went down to his work one day in a non-invasive way, and I said, okay, what's going on? I said, you know, he said, well, I think we've already made our choice. And I'm like, wow, I was just so confused. I was so naive. So what happened was, I remember leaving going, like, they contacted me, and they didn't even give me a chance to jam with them, you know? It just seemed like such an uncool, very inconsiderate, a-hole-ish thing to do. Now, to the fellow's credit, who played bass, I did eventually jam with him one time, maybe a year later, and he was cool. I think he was actually just kind of doing it because he felt bad because of what happened before. You know, he was a nice enough guy. He was a very talented bass player. But also, to complete the story, the guitar player that they got and the guitar player singer that they had, they recorded a demo. You know, that type of music wasn't going anywhere anymore. So apparently they moved to another big city, Toronto, and started like a grunge tribute band of some sort, and they just kind of left him high and dry. That's my recollection of it. But from what I had heard, I knew that one guy in that band was not really a nice guy. So it all happened for the better. I was very naive. I would tell any musician out there who goes through something like that, I wouldn't give someone like that a second chance. Again, to be fair, the bass player, I think he was just trying to kind of go with what the other guys in the band wanted. I think he's a nice guy. It didn't really affect my judgment of him, you know, with time. And for the most part, if people are that inconsiderate that they're going to contact you and get you to go out of your way, meet them and jam with them, and they don't even show up, you really don't want to give those types of people your time. If they're that inconsiderate, what are they going to be like if you're in a band with them and things get going? That's when a lot of interesting things can happen. If you look back at this video where I posted why I hate playing in bands, you can get some insight into that as well. Again, that was many years ago. I didn't understand about politics. It took me a little bit to understand, like, well, he has the look and he has the whole thing down. So that's why. But I just thought the whole thing was very unprofessional and very uncool. But as I said, for those of you who ever experienced that, there's politics everywhere, folks. If someone contacts you to audition and they don't even have the courtesy to meet you or even have you out to jam after they ask you to, don't give them your time. Move on. There'll be other cool things coming down the road. I hope that helps, guys. Remember, practice hard, practice smart. We'll see you soon.